thanks for everyone for tuning in and logging on and coming and joining us for our staff activities presentation to members. It's just a great opportunity for our staff to kind of let everybody know what we've been up to recently and been working on and working very hard towards, and get feedback, as well as let folks know what we're up to this summer and our plans to get underway. So hopefully this is a great opportunity for you to learn a little bit what we've been up to, and hopefully find ways to get involved and volunteer and join us on our programs. Next slide, please. For those who came late, this presentation is being recorded, and we post it on our YouTube channel following. So if for whatever reason you fall asleep or have to go take the dog out or whatever, this will be posted on our YouTube channel later. For the agenda, we'll do some brief welcomes, introductions, and then move right into our different staff reports. Starting very quickly, Austin Nolan will be presenting on some of the stuff he's been going with. Chloe Kramer, our new biologist support, will also introduce herself. Justin Budick, our environmental stewardship coordinator, will fill us in on what he's been working on. Deborah Deacon, our wonderful education coordinator, will tell us all the things she's been doing with students across the area. Katrina Adams has some really interesting restoration, stream restoration projects that she's been working on. And I'll take it home. And hopefully we'll be able to get through all of this and still have times for a quick Q&A and discussion. Next slide, please. I would just like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territories, living and working on the lands of the Wasanic people as well as the Kwanghan people. And we have, a really great opportunity to work with many of these different nations on projects in their territories, which is always really rewarding and seems to make for the best projects. So we look forward to working collaboratively with these different groups, nations, and their stewardship teams, and yeah, bringing value to each other's programming and helping each other achieve our environmental goals that are collective. Next slide, please. Thank you to our many supporters, including the different levels of government, from the feds all the way down to the 10 or so municipalities that we work directly with and get support from and grant and aid. So thank you to those bodies. And much of that support is also in kind in terms of staff being able to plan projects with us or even deliver projects with us, as well as cash. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. Also, thank you to the many different foundations that support our work, from the BCCF to the Canadian Red Cross, the Victoria Foundation, the World Wildlife Fund, Destination Greater Victoria. There's just so many that support our work through granting and also partnership, and again, in-kind support. So just thank you to those different groups. Next slide, please. And thank you to our corporate sponsors, many of who have supported this organization for many years, decades even, and some that are just kind of joining the train of support. So this is just a few of some of these supporters. The list is much longer and would not fit onto one slide, and we'd probably be here for a very long time to thank each of them individually. But just throwing the general nod and thanks to these corporate sponsors who really provide a lot, are very generous, and give us that kind of freedom to explore and do some of these really great projects. Next slide, please. This map's a little bit dated, but we're not just peninsula streams anymore. We're peninsula streams and shorelines, and we're not just on the peninsula. We seem to have expanded into Greater Victoria and beyond, and are being pulled ever further by communities that require our services or are interested in our programs and want to get something going in their community. So we're constantly being pushed further west into the Juan de Fuca region, and we're trying to keep up with that demand while not losing kind of any ground where we currently are. If there's any kind of question about where a project or program is taking place, a lot of it's up on our website, so you can explore some of our projects and programs there and get a little bit more information, or just ask one of our staff in the chat. Next slide, please. And without further ado, I'll introduce Austin Nolan. Take it away, Austin.
Thanks, Al. Okay, yeah, I'm Austin Nolan. I'm the support biologist with Peninsula Streams. I've been with Peninsula Streams just a little bit over 2 years now. Reached 2 years at the beginning of May. Um, Loving it. I've got my hands a little bit dipped into everything as the support biologist, but today I'm going to be talking about the beach program and also a little bit of some small in-stream work projects coming up this summer. Next slide, please. So yeah, the Beach and Beach program stands for Beach Education and Conservation of Habitat. Within this program, we do forage fish surveys, green crab monitoring, education, environmental DNA collections, beach cleans, beach restorations, and more. Forage fish is a really large component of the beach program. For those that aren't aware, forage fish are the small schooling planktivores that connect the lower trophic levels of plankton to the upper trophic levels of marine mammals, other fish, shorebirds, especially also salmon as well. Um, Forage fish are absolutely crucial for supporting our marine food webs. The two species that we survey for are surf smelt and sand lance. These two species we survey for because they are obligate intertidal spawners, which means that in order to reproduce, they come up into the intertidal zone at a high tide and spawn on the beach where their eggs will remain for about 2 weeks. Next slide, please. We're still working on the data here. We've done a lot of surveys, so there's a lot of data to go through, which is not a bad problem to have. Up to February, we've completed about 160 surveys. We've started looking at 8 new beaches. We've set 9 new sites at already existing beaches. We've detected surf smelt 34 times and sand lance 10 times. This year, we've also identified 3 new spawning beaches that we've never seen spawning on before. So that's fantastic. Some more forage fish spawning habitat found. And this has also been a really great year for sand lance for us. 10 detections this year. In total, since 2018, we've only had 28. So really, really good year for sand lance. We're typically finding surf smelt here on the peninsula and westward. So an exciting year for forage fish. Next slide, please. On this map, the red represents sand lance finds and the blue represents surf smelt finds. You can see Sydney North Saanich is a real hot spot for surf smelt, especially. Arthur, Balmacara, and Maplebank beaches were our newly identified spawning beaches this year. Happened a little after February and March, but the biggest find we had this year on the beach was in a very impressive amount of eggs. 4,760 surf smelt and 20 sand lance in one sample on that beach. We've had a few. This was at Sydney North Saanich Yacht Club Beach, which is up in Seaham Harbor. We've had a few big finds at that beach, as well as very close by neighboring beach Tryon. But it really shows how important that area of the peninsula is for these surf smelt populations. There's a lot of spawning going on. You can see where we found sand lance this year. There should be one more red dot in Seaham Harbor there, but I think it's just been covered up by all the surf smelt finds we've had. We've got Breakwater Beach, SNS Yacht Club, as I mentioned, Coles Bay, Talista Beach at Ray Creek, Arthur Beach, which was a new beach for us there, just above the spit there on the east side of the peninsula, down in Royal Bay and at Esquimalt Lagoon as well. So yeah, another, again, great year for sand lance, but also, a good year for surf smelt as well. Next slide, please. In terms of a summary, since starting the program in 2018, we've well surpassed 1,000 samples now, which is fantastic. Great job. By now, we've certainly surpassed 200 surf smelt detections, which is giving us roughly a 20% success rate, which puts us about in line in what I've seen from Washington's data. So I think that we're doing a great job and fantastic work. We're now at an impressive 185 sites spread out over 110 beaches, and we'll continue to expand that as we move westward into Chosin and Sooke and beyond. Next slide, please. In terms of talking about some future planning with forage fish, previous summers, I've been pulled into freshwater. We've really reduced our rate of monitoring quite drastically. This year, we'd like to continue the monitoring, certainly not at a reduced rate, compared to winter, but we want to sample more than we have been. We're looking to identify where surf smelt are spawning during the summertime and how these eggs are doing. Places that we're going to want to be looking are beaches with freshwater seepage, either from creek or storm outflows or drains, lagoons. We want to look at shaded beaches, beaches that have that natural backshore that are covering and shading these surf smelt eggs during our hot summer days. And we'll want to look at our known productive beaches as well, which we have been doing, especially Tryon and SNS Yacht Club. We have been finding spawning in the summer. It's just typically about 80% of those eggs are desiccated or dried out. Keeping in mind with tips for surveys for the summer, we're not looking for sand lance. Surf smelt are very high up in the intertidal zone. So you're wanting to look in that upper 1/3 of the intertidal. You're not looking to expand beyond there. Another tip, if you get a large sample in your jar, vortex it again if you have the time. 15 minutes on the beach can save our microscope as literal hours under the microscope. So if you have that extra time, please do that. Next slide, please. In terms of education this year, since the last presentation to members in December, we had 115 students out on the beach. I also coordinated with Dr. Ben Neal out at UVic, a professor, and we created a 3-week-long 4th-year marine biology lab that was all about our intertidal survey methods, where they tested out our methodology. They had 60+ UVic students out on the beach at Cadboro Bay practicing these surveys. We even seeded a small portion of the beach with preserved eggs, and they did end up finding them using our methods, which was fantastic. I also retrained the Pearson College team this year. They've been going for a few years now with their own kit. I trained up the St. Michael's University students on Fortress surveys, and they're going to have their own kit shortly. And also the UVic Ecological Restoration Club was retrained up and did a few surveys for us this summer. So lots of students on the beach. Next slide, please. To go out training, since December our last, I trained up the Sooke Marine team about a month ago now, and they've got their own kit going. So this is going to help facilitate expanding westward and add a lot of new beaches and sampling pressure in Sooke, in addition to our existing team in Sooke. We've now trained up the Songhees, the Sachem, and the Sooke Marine teams on forage fish sampling, and they all have their own kits and are going out and sampling their beaches. Next slide, please. Moving on to freshwater, I'll be involved in a lot of different freshwater projects. There's a few smaller ones that I'm sort of taking the lead on. Out at Tatayat Creek last year, we reconstructed 2 riffles and we ended up removing a problem stump. This year, there's a little bit of minor in-stream work to be done. A boulder run would be great. There's some deposition happening in our spawning gravel, so adding a boulder run to break up that water and continue to carry that sediment a little farther downstream. As well as add some spawning gravel, more spawning gravel to the creek. You can always use some more spawning gravel. In that area, in Reach 1, we're also have been working with our stewardship group to get some invasive ivy removal done, and are planning to do a large planting there in the later fall. Next slide, please. Millstream at Cedarvale. So last year, I helped out Katrina, and we made a really nice big riffle down at Cedarvale, and it seems to have lasted through the winter very well. This year, we're more focused on just using up the remaining material on site. This is likely going to include a riffle construction and probably some spawning gravel additions as well. Next slide, please. Ray Creek, there was assessment done of Ray Creek back in the earlier spring, which I unfortunately missed out on. But this assessment, the report generated, has identified multiple restoration opportunities. There's a lot of work to be done over the next few years. There's a pedestrian bridge proposed in that area. It's actually a little bit farther south than where I put that red square, but it's pretty close. We might as well sneak our way in there during that work and do a little restoration. That part is, the channel's very infilled with sediment there, so it'd be a good idea for us to get some of that sediment out and remove some of the invasives in the area. Next slide, please. Here at Chalet Creek, there's some minor in-stream work coming down the pipe, some chipping for some pool construction. There's some riffle modification that can be done. Certainly, there's some places for some riparian planting in the fall, as well as some invasive removal. We've got yellow flag iris growing up in that upstream site. So lots of work to be done there. Next slide, please. Here's 1010 Creek. 1010 Creek runs along next to the airport there. It's a really low energy system. And one of the problems right now is there's a lot of small woody debris stick jams in the system. And because it's so low energy, it's likely making fish passage quite difficult. So this summer, we'd like to remove some of these stick jams, possibly reconstruct a handful of riffles, and we'll follow that up with some riparian planting and staking in the fall and winter. Next slide, please. And that's it from me. If you have any questions for me, there's my email. I will now pass it off to our new hire, Chloe, who's been a really great help. And yeah, take it away, Chloe.
Cool, thanks, Austin. Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Chloe. I'm the biologist support technician with Peninsula Streams, and also the newest staff member with Peninsula Streams. I started at the beginning of April, so just about a month and a half now. I'll just do a quick background on myself, just so you have some context of who I am, and then kind of, yeah, go into what I've been up to over the past month. So yeah, my background is in biology. I did my undergrad at UVic in marine biology specifically. Finished that in 2021 and then spent 3 years as a research technician in the WANIS lab at UVic. That's a fisheries ecology and marine conservation lab with research primarily focused on salmon and forage fish as well. There I worked on 2 projects. The first is the Adult Salmon Diet Program. This is an ongoing study looking at temporal and spatial changes in the diets of adult Chinook salmon. And then the second is the Coho Otolith Project, which is a study looking at the otoliths or ear bones of hatchery-reared coho salmon. Next slide. So yeah, I finished that job at the end of March and then started with Peninsula Streams a couple days later. It's been a very fun and busy past month. I've kind of been helping out with all areas, which has been a really great way to kind of see the scope of work that we do here. The main areas I've been helping out with are education, our smolt trap on the Colquitts, the beach program, and some communications and outreach as well. I'll just briefly go over these first 3. Next slide. So as I'm sure Deb will tell you, it's been a pretty busy spring with all of our education programs. Just in the past month, I've attended 13 different education events. Most of those have been fry releases with the Stream to Sea program. So helping classrooms release the salmon fry from their classrooms into nearby streams. And then also pairing that with some education on stream invertebrates, which is always a big hit with the kids. Other education events I've attended have been the Watershed Model and Salmon Life Cycle program, our Creatures of Habitat, so helping to remove invasive plant species like blackberry and ivy, and then our beach program as well, so getting kids out on the beach, working on their crab ID skills, and walking through some forage fish spawning surveys as well. And Deb will go into more detail in these programs. Next slide. Another big portion of my time has been on our Colquitts River smolt trap. Katrina will go into more detail about this, so I'll keep it brief so I don't steal her thunder, but it's been running since the beginning of April and will continue for a couple more weeks just into June. We've had a team of staff and volunteers go out and check it every morning, count and ID all the fish, measure our coho and cutthroat. This has been super fun. I've really enjoyed it, and I think all of our volunteers have as well. Every day is different. You never know what you're going to get when you open the trap, which is always exciting. So that list on the right there is just the species that we've had so far. So coho and cutthroat are our target species, but we also get other things like sculpin, stickleback, some crayfish, lamprey as of yesterday, and then some invasives as well. So bullfrog, pumpkin seed, perch, and a smallmouth bass as well. We've also started pit tagging our coho smolts. And again, Katrina will share some more details on this, but for those that aren't familiar, pit tagging is basically just injecting a small electronic chip into the body cavity of the fish, and then that gives us an estimate of survival once they leave the river and head out to the ocean, and then as they return as adults as well. Next slide. So the last thing I'll touch on is the beach program. This is going to be where my role at Peninsula Streams kind of takes more of a definitive shape moving forward. I'll be slowly taking over the beach program from Austin as he kind of moves more into freshwater activities. So the past month, I've just been getting the lay of the land from him. I've tagged along to some forage fish spawning surveys, some training days, and I've also been working with the data from all of our surveys from the past year as well. That'll be a little bit of a slower handoff from Austin, but our other two programs under the beach umbrella are invasive European green crab monitoring and shorekeepers. Those are going to be areas that I will be a bit more heavily involved with from the get-go. Next slide. So yeah, I will be leading our European green crab monitoring for this year. We have our license good to go, and I'll be trained by a Coastal Restoration Society in a couple weeks, and then we're all set. So we'll be sampling 2 days monthly, June to September. We're going to be doing 2 sites this season, Millstream Estuary for sure. Our second site's still a little bit up in the air. We're just working out the details of that, possibly Pat Bay or maybe Ray Creek Estuary if that doesn't work out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I think it'll be super fun. And if anyone out there is interested in coming out and volunteering for this, I'll have my email up in a couple slides, and feel free to reach out to me and I can get you set up with that. Next slide. The last thing is our Shorekeepers 2.0 program. This is super exciting. This is a new shoreline monitoring program that we're going to hopefully roll out this summer. This is going to be adapting some standardized protocols from some organizations down in Washington for monitoring some different shoreline variables at natural, restored, and impacted beaches. This is super cool. This is going to be kind of like in addition to our forage fish surveys, just kind of looking at different variables to help give a sense of the overall health of our shorelines. And also by looking at those 3 different types of sites, natural, restored, and impacted, also gives us a sense of kind of effectiveness of our restoration, which is super cool. So all of these little squares are different variables you can use to monitor shorelines. So anything from beach rack and logs to insects, birds, sediment size, things like that. This is still very much in its beginning phases. We're just working out which sites we want to look at and which combinations of variables at those sites as well. So lots of work still to be done on this, but if this piques your interest, stay tuned for more details. Next slide. Yeah, that's it for me. Just wanted to give a brief overview of what I've been up to. My email's there if you want to get in touch, but I will pass it off to Justin.
Hi, everyone. For those who haven't met me, my name is Justin Budick, and I'm the Environmental Stewardship Coordinator for Peninsula Streams. And I'm just going to be giving a select overview of what I've been up to lately, including our Rain Garden for Headwaters program, some stewardship highlights, and also an important water quality update as well. So let's get into it. So starting with our most imminent rain garden on the horizon is set to be built at Parkdale Church and Childhood Center. This is in the Cecilia Creek watershed and also in the city of Victoria. And the idea is that we're going to be converting a part of the parking lot and outdoor play area into more of an interactive garden. So the Parkdale community approached us and the Friends of Bowker Creek a while ago with the desire to change that concrete jungle into something a little bit more vibrant and seasonal for their preschool. And so we thought a rain garden would be perfect. This rain garden, which I have some pictures and diagrams on the next slide, will be about 75 meters squared in area and catching about 1,000 meters squared of impervious surface. So all of that hot, toxic, and fast stormwater is going to be captured by this garden and filtered before it can make its way into Cecilia Creek. Of note, we had a really successful workshop in February that had over 70 community members attend to learn about this project in particular, green stormwater infrastructure, and also get to play a part in helping to design the garden. So after that, I was able to amalgamate and refine those designs, and we've worked up that into a design that we're really happy with, and is currently being reviewed by the City of Victoria. So once we get the green light to go, we're hoping to get that built quite soon. So stay tuned for that. And if you'd like to volunteer with this project in particular, or just our rain garden program in general, so maintaining some of the other gardens that we have going in terms of mulch spreading, and watering, and weeding, and education as well, please get in contact with us. We're always looking for new energetic volunteers. So yeah, and just before we move on to the next slide, I will mention that I have lots of other sites that I'm currently developing proposals for and kind of working with stakeholders to get future gardens built. Kind of in the bottom right corner there, you'll see a bunch of waypoints. So there's lots going on in our rain garden program. Excited to really accelerate things over the next little while. Next slide, please. Yeah, so like I mentioned, here are some pictures and diagrams of that Parkdale rain garden. And the idea essentially is that water will be entering the garden through at least 3 different curb cuts and slowly meandering its way through a low lying area, allowing that water to soak in and be filtered before, if necessary, during high flow events, spill into the storm drain. But most of the water will be kept on site. And working with the Parkdale community, we're also going to be trying to incorporate things like stepping stones and maybe an outdoor learning area as well for the kids. So this will be a really exciting project to stay tuned in. And other locations of note that I have going on at the moment include St. Michael's University School. We're hoping to put in a garden there in the next little while, with students helping with that design, as well as Mount Douglas Secondary, Oak Bay High, Colquitt's Middle School, and others. So a lot of those schools I just mentioned are in School Division 61. And so thank you to them for being such a supportive partner, and also to our other sponsors and partners as well for allowing us to carry on this program. Next slide. Yeah, so we've had a few really awesome beach clean events over the last little while that I wanted to highlight. The first one that we had in January encompassed over 3.5 kilometers of shoreline in Oak Bay. And it was honestly surprising. We didn't see as much garbage as we were expecting. We still removed over 200 pounds of it, but we covered a really large swath of beach and had kids and other community members learning about forage fish. And we did collect a lot of microplastics and small bits of beach foam as well. So just underlining how important it is to keep these beaches and intertidal zones clean for things like spawning, surf smelt, and dam land. We also followed it up with a clean in the Gorge waterway, much more productive per unit effort. A short section of about 600 meters resulted in well over 300 pounds of garbage, including parts of cars, so styrofoam, dashboards, etc. And I had some volunteers that showed up to both of those events, and they definitely were struck by the difference in cleanliness between these 2 areas of Victoria. So I'm hoping to plan another beach clean event, likely in the Gorge, for Ocean Week, the first week of June. So keep looking at your inbox for that invite, because I think it'll be a really good one. Next slide. Yeah, so I've been working with a number of different dedicated stewardship groups across the CRD. And I mean, those who I'm not going to mention a whole lot, I include like Stillston Creek, Friends of Bowker Creek, Swan Creek, etc. But I have been really working closely with the Kiwanis Stewardship Group and Friends of Millstream Watershed. So the Kiwanis Stewardship Group has really taken over the water quality sampling program in Hagen and Graham Creeks, as well as Tatayat Creek, and as well as other riparian work, including invasive removal and some riparian planting as well. So our plan is to also start doing some in-stream work in these tributaries this summer, which will include hand construction and reconstruction of riffles and spawning pools, and further water quality testing as well. So they're very excited to get that underway, and so am I. The Friends of Millstream Watershed, we had a really productive meeting That top left photo kind of depicts a subset of the attendees at Wamaiasin, or formerly known as Mary Lake, up in the Highlands. And yeah, we had a very good constructive conversation of where the group and other partners could go with restoring parts of the in-stream habitat, as well as riparian areas in the Millstream watershed. So they've already completed numerous hours of invasive removal and creek garbage clean, but we'll also be participating in in-stream work in Cedarvale and other areas, as Austin mentioned earlier. And just these groups, as well as a few other community groups as well, have already put in over 500 volunteer hours and counting over the last couple of months. So I think we're set to really have a fantastic year when it comes to habitat restoration and a whole bunch of other activities with our stewardship group. One thing I will mention is that we also did recently have an awesome Earth Day event at Centennial Park, where a large group of volunteers that encompassed people coming from all sorts of different places in Greater Victoria, not just Central Saanich. We potted up over 500 different tree species, including Douglas fir and cedars, that will be eventually outplanted this fall and beyond in many of our restoration sites. So that was a great event as well that I wanted to highlight. Next slide. Yeah, and lastly for me, so 6-PPD quinone is something you might have been hearing about from us, or maybe even on the news. This is kind of a new hot topic in freshwater biology and ecology, and for good reason, because while tires are nothing new, we are realizing how truly toxic they are for our salmon population. So just as a brief overview, 6-PPD is an antioxidant found in car tires. It breaks down into 6-PPD quinone, which turns out to be very, very, very toxic to many different types of fish species, particularly coho salmon. So in parts per trillion, which is incredibly small, this compound found in our waterways can lead to mortality events in juvenile and even adult coho salmon. So that graph in the bottom right of Colweed Creek, especially in those first two monitoring events, you're seeing levels of 6-PPDQ well into the lethal range for adult coho. So this is something that is of increasing interest and study across North America, really. And Peninsula Streams is keeping pace. We're currently talking with BCCF and VRU, our partners in this project, to increase and refine our locations of these monitoring for 6-PPDQ. Because while this is just another hit to our already fragile urban salmon population, the silver lining is that we are now looking for it, and we have data backing up our concerns. So people are starting to listen. And another opportunity here is to expand rain gardens and other forms of green stormwater infrastructure. Studies are coming out showing how rain gardens are effectively capture and neutralize close to 100% of this contaminant before it enters fish-bearing creeks. So not only is it good for neutralizing 6-PPDQ, it's also pollinator gardens, and the list goes on and on. So this is just another reason why we want to build more rain gardens. Yeah, and I attended a conference recently up in Nanaimo concerning 6-PPDQ, and it's encouraging to see how many organizations and people are on this topic. So I'm hopeful. And next slide. Yeah, and that's me. So feel free to get in contact with me via my email there. Really looking for many more volunteers, especially for our rain garden program, to help with summer maintenance. But generally, if you'd like to be added to email lists for our stewardship groups, I'm also a good person to contact. And yeah, thank you so much. And without further ado, I will pass it on to, I think, Katrina. No, sorry, Deb. Go ahead, Deb.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. let's get right into it. Next slide. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say a big thank you if any of my volunteers are on here. So it's been my first year, obviously, running these programs, so I've relied a lot on other people's memories and knowledge of the programs, as well as, encouraging new ideas and avenues. So I'm really thankful for my volunteers. In particular, there's a picture of him in the middle. Yates has got stacked up the most hours for our education program, and he's a birder, and so I'm trying to download his bird brain so that I can talk to the kids about shorebirds as well. Yeah, anyways, if you have a bird that you think the kids should know about, send me an email. Next slide, please. Okay, I also on that note want to say a big thank you to two volunteers, Karina Fisher and Michelle Watt, who have done amazing work restoring our Douglas Creek watershed model. We kicked it off with that one, even though it's one of our fewer used ones, because the two of them had a wealth of knowledge about that particular watershed, and we're most keen to work on that. So we are going to be repairing the other ones. We've kind of been trying to find a date that works for all that need to be there, but we're looking for more people to attend, but it'll be in June, probably mid-June, probably on a Saturday or a Sunday. Putting feelers out there. Okay, next slide, please. So big highlight for our for my time here at Peninsula Streams has been actually the last 30 or so days. Chloe mentioned a little bit about this, and I've had Austin's helped out at this, and Justin and Ian as well. So it's been a real kind of nice thing to tie a bunch of staff together. We got to go to a lot of different streams, and one of my favorite moments is in the bottom left. I had a student ask if he and his friend could drum their kind of traditional song that welcomed or basically gave thanks to the wildlife. So that was a really cool, really cool moment that I just did not expect, and you couldn't have planned something that unique and nice. So really, really honored to have been working alongside Jocelyn Cliff, who runs the Stream to Sea program through Fisheries and Oceans. And yeah, 16 schools total, just with the helping with the fry releases. So next slide, please. Creatures of Habitat. Okay, this was crazy. It was 2 days, 400 students. Oh my gosh, I was exhausted after that. I think I got a little bit of a cold just from doing that. It was so wonderful though. What an amazing experience. Bottom right is just one of our piles of blackberry, mostly blackberry. I had kids, working through recess. They were allowed to take a break and they chose not to. So the kids really loved it. The teachers loved it too. And everybody had a really, I think, awesome time. We're still looking for a black travel mug though, if anyone left the event with one. I digress. Anyways, next slide, please. So our watershed and salmon education program has kind of followed the usual format, but we've taken it to newer schools or new schools that we haven't been to before. We had a day in, I believe it was April, where we brought a watershed model, that new Douglas Creek one, to Torquay Elementary, and they could see their own school with that tiger mural that you see on the right there. That was literally on one of the houses in the model. So the kids really got a kick out of that, and I think it was like something like 200 students that day, or those 2 days. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of numbers. I'll show you the numbers in a second. Next slide, please. Yeah, beach program, you've heard a lot about that. We had a couple of new additions to the folks that we've reached. So private schools have been kind of bringing us out, getting their own kits. So that's been cool. You know, we do have some great partnerships going with some of our independent schools in the area, as well as our public schools. Continuing to expand that program, we've kind of fleshed out a little bit more of the green crab education to go along with what we're doing in the monitoring side of things. So half of our activity on the beach when we did some of these programs, you know, half the kids would do some crab identification with me and searching for different things on the beach. The other group was with Austin doing the forage fish. So it was very cool. We're now going to be bringing in beach seining. So the beach program is really taking off, and the shorekeepers component as well is only gonna, I think, further excite our communities about the work we're doing on our shores. Next slide, please. Oh boy, today was the first day of yellowfish painting, and I still have yellow paint on my hands because there weren't enough pairs of gloves for everybody. So yes, we did some yellowfish painting down in Oak Bay around Lafayette Park. There in the middle, you're seeing in the middle top is a brochure that I created with Jocelyn's Stream to Sea program she supported, and with the CRD to talk about what are some of the bylaws around stormwater. And yeah, so this is a really easy program to pull off. I mean, it's not our program, it's sort of being done all over the province, and it's through the Stream to Sea program as well. But we have a kit that we're able to lend out to schools or community groups, and I'm really going to go crazy on the yellowfish painting this summer. So yellowfish coming to a storm drain near you. Next slide, please. Yeah, so our numbers, I actually think that we're ahead. I have to go back and check. I think I'd said something like 1,400 or 1,500 was the goal, but we still have like we still have like 10 other schools, and some of these events are pretty large. So, you know, these numbers are going to be a lot bigger actually come the end of June. So I wish I could tell you exactly what it is, but even today I'm booking new schools that have never been engaged with Peninsula Streams in this kind of way before. So yeah, you might see some kind of familiar connections on here. Deep Cove Elementary, Shoreline, we're going to do a really cool event with Shoreline. You know, they're going to land their school canoes in Portage Inlet Linear Park and do the beach program with us. Next slide, please. Outreach and communications. Yep. So just quick highlights. We were at Patagonia. Really awesome day. They were super accommodating and made us a little prize pack so people could write down their emails and join our mailing list. So that was wonderful. Shout out to Patagonia. Esquimalt Nation had us for their spring Easter barbecue, and that was the hit. We had that the salmon wheel, and I brought some candy for the kids, and apparently we were the best table at the barbecue. So the third picture is actually somebody, an 8-year-old girl that helped me at a community event. She just came up to the table. She really loved the presentation I gave her. And then she said, I think I need to do this. So, I gave her my Vise and my high vis vest, and she started running the presentation next to me. So, you know, a little bit more magic, I think, when she was there. And then the last one, Chloe, you know, as new as she is to Peninsula Streams, just jumping straight into our outreach efforts, has done so much for us when it comes to our website and our social media. Some amazing reels on Instagram have come from Chloe. So we're all really like just jazzed about that. And yeah, so she took Peninsula Streams. I can't remember where you went actually. It was Parksville? It was somewhere. Anyways, went somewhere, did something. Next slide, please. We have some upcoming community events we'll get to in a second, but yeah, we've been updating our website. We have a lot of really high quality photos, and we're trying to get more to really capture the amazing work that is happening. And so continuing to look for partnerships that are, surrounding communications, outreach, media, to really amplify the message and the work that's happening. So continue to see good things there, but it's a big part of our path moving forward and a big part of my anticipated work this summer. Next slide, please. Okay, so upcoming outreach events. You can catch us next week. It is Saanich Parks is putting on a Biodiversity Day in Brayfoot Park, and all of Brayfoot Elementary will be there. So it's going to be kind of a community event with guaranteed lots of kids. So we'll have the watershed model out. It'll be great. Some World Oceans Day events with our usual partners, the Shaw Center, Elsie, who else are we? I'm forgetting exactly whose event each of these is. No, Fort Rod Hill, there we go. Power to Be, we're doing their Have a Go days, Eats and Beats at the beach. And I think there are a few others that still I haven't pinned down exactly who's going, but there are more coming. So, and if you know of an education opportunity or an outreach opportunity for us, please get in touch with me. We still have a lot of education season to bite through. And then after that, it's, big focus on outreach for the summer. And I'm super excited about that. Thanks so much. I don't know if I went over time. I'm so sorry. With that, I guess I'll introduce our next speaker, who is Katrina. Take it away, Katrina.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Deb. You seem to have been very busy. That's a lot of kids. Jeez. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Katrina Adams, and I'm the senior aquatic biologist with Peninsula Streams. I've been with PSS now for almost 3 years, and I lead the stream and freshwater restoration projects. I have a lot of projects on the go, but I'm just going to sort of touch base on 2 of the big ones that I've been working on and give you some updates of what I've been up to with them, and then chat a little bit about what's upcoming for the summer as well. Next slide. So one of the big projects I've been working on for the last year is one in close partnership with Sartlip First Nation. And it's a restoration project, stream restoration project on a property called Make-A-Witch, which was formerly the Woodwind Farm, just on the corner of West Saanich and Mount Newton. This 78-hectare piece of land was returned to Sartlip in 2020, and there is a grant currently to restore the aquatic habitat of Hagen Creek, which runs through the property. The section of Hagen Creek on this land is about 1.5 kilometers and is really important habitat for coastal cutthroat trout. However, over the last 100 years or more, there's been some, or really heavily impacted by agricultural practices. The stream itself is currently dominated by reed canary grass and is slowly getting infilled. And there's a major opportunity for restoring the habitat, particularly in removing that reed canary grass, replanting with native species, and then increasing or enhancing the in-stream complexity to create that better habitat for trout. Next slide, please. So over the last year, since the project started, we've done a lot of studies to get a better sense of what's happening on the land and what the current conditions are, and using that information and data to inform our design for the big project that we're going to be starting this summer. So we've done a hydrologic study of Hagen Creek, drone map survey of the whole property, creek elevation survey that sort of gave us a sense of what the creek bottom looks like, as well as the riparian banks. Huge challenge, and my big bane of my existence is reed canary grass. So over the last year, just trying to figure out the best method to control this invasive species. So we've done excavator removal by hand. Planting is one of the biggest, best long-term management plans. So we want to plant trees that can grow really quickly and shade out reed canary grass. So we've been doing a lot of planting of various species to see what works best with the soil and conditions there, as well as mulching and then cardboard as well to try and prevent that grass from growing back. Last summer, I mentioned in the last presentation, but we did a small tributary restoration of one of the small tribs that come into Hagen Creek, where we redug out the channel that had been infilled with the canary grass, placed spawning gravel for coastal cutthroat trout. And then you can sort of see in the photo on the left there, you know, you can see the glimpse of the new gravel that we put in, and then put cardboard down to try and prevent that grass from growing back, and then used willow and red osier dogwood stakes to try and create that nice shade again. Next slide. So our plans for this summer, we've got a really exciting project. I'm really, really pumped for this one. The diagram there's a bit messy, but essentially the dark blue polygons you can see are alcoves or side sort of off-channel habitat that we're going to recreate in off the main stem of Hagen, sort of similar to what was done in Cuthbert Homes Park a few years ago. Sort of recreating these really nice big deep pools off the main channel of the stream, and then within those alcoves placing big cedar stumps and boulders to increase that in-stream habitat, create hiding holes for the trout, and then birds and other wildlife will certainly use that newly created habitat as well. The orange and green polygons you can see surrounding those alcoves will be different planting areas. So lots of big trees that we're going to be putting in, and then other riparian species. Also hoping to build in some vernal pools for the amphibians on the land. But yeah, this is sort of a phase one of multiple phases, as it's such a big piece of land, and there's so much opportunity for restoration here. Next slide, please. The other big project I'm working on is in the Colquitt's watershed. So last year we received $250,000 over 3 years from BC SRF, with sort of two main pieces of that grant. One being restoration, so we have a different section of the Colquitt's or surrounding tributaries that we will restore each year, and then a big piece is also the monitoring. So looking at the salmon populations, as well as monitoring the restoration work that's already been done. Next slide. So last year, and I had talked about this in our last presentation, but last summer, instead of doing a larger section for restoration, we did 5 smaller sections, some within the main stem of Colquitt's and some within other tributaries. And so I think it was about a total of 600 meters of stream that was restored. And then over the winter time, so in the last few months or so, we've been doing a lot of riparian planting. We had a great event at Swan Creek Park where we planted over 300 plants in a really highly impacted section of the Swan Creek Park. And then we also did some sedge planting as well within a floodplain section. So these areas will be monitored and then watered over the next few years by SANAG. And hoping to continue doing this planting within Swan Creek and then Colquitt's Park as well, or Copley Park, sorry, where we have done previous restoration. Next slide. One, and Chloe already touched on this, but something that's been what I've been focusing on for the last month and a half or so is a smolt fence. So this structure, you can see the sort of the fencing part was installed in the beginning of April, and that fence spans the whole of Colquitt's. Now, this was installed just upstream of Cuthbert Homes, so just under all the highway overpasses along inner urban. And sort of at the bottom of the V, there's a hose that then flows down into this big metal box. So essentially how it works is any migrating fish that are heading downstream to the ocean will get funneled in through that hose and into the box. And then we go every day and check it, count the fish, and identify the species, and then measure them as well. And so, yeah, we're going there every day with our volunteers. It's been an amazing group of folks that we're working with. It's always so exciting to see what different species that we're going to see. And if you go to the next slide, Chloe kind of mentioned some of the species, but here's some more photos. Coho, cutthroat, you can see the cutthroat at that bottom photo, that really vibrant red slash on its throat. We've been getting some really big ones, which has been really cool to see. Other native species, the sculpin, stickleback, and then that lamprey, which came in yesterday, which was really exciting to see. And then invasive species, of course, as well. So we've got our smallmouth bass and perch, and then pumpkin seeds, another one too. And if you go to the next slide, got a little video here. So depending on the numbers of the morning, we also do a night check because we want to try and make sure that we're not getting too much overcrowding in the box. So one night I came at about 9:30 p.m. and I opened the box and there was over 500 coho smolts in there, which was crazy. They were sort of like boiling out over the water. So I was there for many hours in the middle of the night with my flashlight, you know, like scooping out fish. But amazing to see these big numbers come through. It's been a really exciting project. Yeah, and if you skip to the next slide, you can see our results to date. Oh, there's the video again. Yeah, there we go. So to date, I just updated this morning. We've had 3,853 coho smolts come through, which is super exciting. And I think about 190, maybe 200 now of the coastal cutthroat trout. I'm really excited to see these numbers. This is the first year that we've done this, so nothing really to compare it to. However, there was a fence being run at Craigflower this year as well. They're at about 500, maybe 600 smolts now, though they reached 5,000 last year. So it's been really interesting to see that comparison and the changes by year. So we'll be continuing this for the next 2 years, and we'll see what differences we can get in the productivity of the stream. Next slide. And so in conjunction with the small trap, and Chloe touched on this, we are also doing pit tagging. So when we're capturing these smolts, we are sedating them and then inserting these tags into them and then releasing them on their way. And then in a few months, we'll be setting up an array just upstream of where the small trap currently is. And then when those fish are coming back to spawn in about a year, 18 months or so, we'll get a sense of the survivability of when they're coming back. At the same time, we're also doing some beach seining in the gorge to see if we can recapture some of our tagged fish to get a sense of how long it's taking them to swim out to the estuary and then sort of move their way out to the open ocean. And really exciting, just the other day, we were at near Bay Street Bridge, just at the beach there, and we got one of our pit tagged fish. So coho number 1694 was one that we recaptured and had been tagged 6 days prior. And we could see that he had grown a fair amount. And yeah, it was interesting to see that, you know, he had made it out of the river and was on his way out of the estuary and then out to the open ocean eventually. And we're going to be continuing pit tagging for the next little while, and then next year really ramping up the program as well. Next slide. And I just wanted to give a huge thank you to all of our small trap volunteers. We've had an amazing group of people. It's so much fun to go every morning and see what we find in that box. Yeah, it's just been a really, really great group of folks to work with. And if anyone's interested to come check it out, send me an email and we'd love to show you what we're doing there every morning at 8 a.m. Next slide. So for the restoration this year, we are planning a large project. This is in close partnership with the District of Saanich Engineering, as well as Saanich Parks. We're going to be restoring a 180-meter section of Gabo Creek. So it's a big, big section. Gabo Creek is a really important tributary and overwintering rearing habitat for coho fry. It flows from Rithitz Bog, past Glanford, and then enters the Colquitts within Copley Park. And it has that really nice slow flow, which is really important for fry during those winter flooding events and conditions. So yeah, it's a really important habitat, though it does require a lot of restoration. As you can see in the photo there, there's very little in-stream complexity. There's no real habitat for them to hide in from predators, such as large wood, stumps, and rock. So that'll be a major focus for the restoration that we're going to be doing this summer. And I will definitely be updating you folks in the next presentation. Next slide. Finally, another project that's just currently working on right now is a really cool one about monitoring a coastal cutthroat trout sort of movement patterns through Portage Inlet and the Gorge Waterway. So cutthroat trout are interesting in that we get sea run types where that they can come in and out of the stream, go out to the ocean, come back to spawn, and can repeat that. We also have resident cutthroat that just stay within the stream. But we're particularly interested in seeing how long these cutthroat are staying within the estuarine environment before they head out to the ocean or before they go back to the stream. So there's a lot of unknowns of how these fish are moving about and when. And so to do this, kind of similar to pit tagging, we'll be inserting tags. However, these ones are actually emitting a ping every so often, and then we'll be setting up receivers throughout the whole area that we're interested, so throughout Portage Inlet and the gorge. And then when these fish with the tags swim within 300, 400 meters of these receivers, the receivers will register a unique number associated with that fish. So we can really get a sense of how these fish are moving through this big area. So we're just working on where the receivers will be placed. The gorge is quite a noisy area, so have to really plan accordingly to make sure that we can capture where those fish are moving. And then we need to capture big fish too. So working with some local anglers for this project. And yeah, this should be ramping up in the next month or so. So very, very exciting. And I will definitely update results in the next presentation as well. And with that, my time is done, and I will pass it off to Kyle. Thank you.
Wow, so much amazing stuff. Thanks, Katrina. Yeah, I'll just quickly give an update on the Mermaid Creek project in Roberts Bay, some of the Portage Inlet marsh restoration things we're doing, as well as an update on the Songhees Walkway Pocket Beach, and then get into some fun stats. And then with that, we should be concluding and getting into some Q&A. So next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I guess I should. I'm Kyle Armstrong, the Executive Director at Peninsula Stream Society. The Roberts Bay project, for those who are familiar and unfamiliar, was a fairly ambitious attempt at restoring the Mermaid Creek salt marsh, provincially red-listed ecosystem of Salicornia and saltgrass. That through kind of past study, including a blue carbon study by Sea Change, was rapidly eroding. Peninsula Streams partnered with Sea Change and the Staken First Nation, as well as the Roberts Bay residents, to raise funds to try to basically see what can be done to protect the system. Next slide, please. There's some photos that were done that kind of show the erosion of the marsh over time. It's kind of a dynamic erosion where, you know, it recedes and then kind of cups back, and then, but overall the trajectory was quite large negatively. So I think about 70% of the marsh was lost over since 1965 or so. Next slide, please. So we consulted with some pretty high-end engineers. DHI Consulting created a concept for us. We then took that to McElhaney for engineer design drawings. And the plan was to essentially bring in these kind of crescent rock headland features, so a hybrid approach to shoreline protection, which would essentially attenuate some of that wave energy and allow us to kind of nourish in and behind those structures. So bringing in some alluvial sand and gravel mix behind those structures, get it to the right elevations, plant it with salt marsh species, and try to bring some of that marsh area back. Materials that were to erode or migrate from this area would then also nourish the beach, which has also suffered from erosion historically, and provide further kind of supplement for smelt spawning habitat in that upper shoreline area where, you know, we have observed spawning in this system, both species. So yeah, lots of effort to kind of get this done. Had lots of community engagement, lots of partnership with the Staken, and had Staken First Nation elders come down and weigh in, and yeah, sent it forward to permitting. Next slide, please. And there's just a photo of the kind of historic conditions on the right, photo of from a neighbor's front property looking out. You can see the Delta Marsh and the vegetation, this kind of interesting kind of pool complex that existed within that. Just kind of highlighting some of what existed there in terms of the extent. That house is kind of on the eastern side. Right. Forgetting now. Whereas today, April 2023, that marsh is largely gone. There's a small kind of piece that you can see, but most of it has been eroded away. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, previous slide, please. So essentially what's happened with that project is we had all the permitting, well, most of the permitting, except for a permit from the provincial province for the Crown license. So the work to do the license to do the work below the natural boundary. And unfortunately, we were unable to get the license to do it. Basically, they had received word from local property owners that it would infringe on their right to access navigable waters, and basically cited their right to navigable waters, their right to access navigable waters. And so the province made it a condition to gain unrestricted permission from those property owners, which would have been impossible to receive in time for our funders' timeline. So unfortunately, we had to pull the project, but that's not to say all that's lost. We learned a lot about the system in terms of future restoration potential. We're going to continue to monitor the system, both for forage fish, but also the marsh system itself and the extent of the marsh and what that continues to do. There's still work to be done in the upper marsh in terms of protecting what's left of that up there and potentially restoring some of that area. And also looking for beach restoration opportunities that might exist. Yeah, I think that, and then the West Coast Environmental Law is going to take it as a case study and kind of look at it and from kind of a bird's eye view and be able to see what can be learned from this as a case study and help inform future restoration projects and future regulations. Next slide, please. The Portage Inlet Marsh restoration project, this is one that's been ongoing. The photo on the left shows kind of the initial conditions when PSS arrived, tons of geese grubbing down the marsh, basically looking like someone's come in there and just weed whacked all the vegetation. These geese are, they've hybridized and they're non-migratory and essentially just wreak havoc on these marsh systems. They'll grub the marsh vegetation right down to soil, and then it leads to basic erosion. So our first attempt at this, we fenced off the area and immediately saw results of vegetation coming back the following year at the same time. Just kind of gave us, wow, like these birds are having a significant impact on the system. Next slide, please. And over the years, we've seen even the bare mud substrate start to recolonize passively with salt marsh species. So this is kind of a recent photo on the right compared to just after we fenced the system on the left. And yeah, and then it continues to kind of infill with that vegetation. That will kind of continue to speed up and we'll start to see more and more coverage of vegetation, more and more growth. As it's able to settle more and more sediment out of the column, it'll grow in elevation and you'll get different communities. And it'll be really interesting to see actually how fast this marsh can recover and how far it might even grow seawards with just the absence of geese. Next slide, please. We were encouraged, so we basically unrolled a fencing program throughout much of what was left of marsh systems in Portage Inlet, including the Craigflower Estuary. And we also switched up the technique. So instead of using that snow fencing, which is plastic and breaks down over time, it kind of makes a mess, we switched up with the more natural design, which is alder post weaved with harvested willow intertwined, which has the same effect, but less impact. And can also provide other benefits, including nice structure for birds to perch, as well as probably some in-stream structure complexity for fish and vertebrates. Next slide, please. There's a photo on the left of the geese doing their thing. That's at Craigflower Marsh. So essentially, they're targeting that Lyngby sedge community, which is often the leading edge marsh community. And what they'll do is they'll eat it right down, and then as they're walking and grubbing, cause that kind of erosion, and you'll get full-on collapse or recession of these marsh banks. And And then on the right, basically that's showing what happens. You're left with kind of this anoxic muck. You can kind of see where drainage channels are starting to form. And as those evolve, the marsh can recover as long as there's nothing continuing eating the regrowth. So this will passively recover, but we were looking at ways to speed it up. So we tried planting it directly with Lyngby sedge. That didn't work. Then the material was too anoxic and mucky. And so we're looking at other ways that could help kind of speed up this recovery through enhancement of the channels, as well as changing or mending the substrate and elevations to get that community back. Next slide, please. So kind of initial pilots on the right there, we did a small kind of crib basket and filled it with a different, or kind of a mix of amended soil. So we used the soil that was on site, as well as some sand and other types of soils, and planted into that with Lyngby sedge. And we had pretty good success. The plants that we planted survived and are growing currently. So that was really encouraging. And so for this summer, we're going to do a small pilot project with View Royal, the World Wildlife Fund, and Sea Change to essentially enhance some of the tidal channels, so dig out some tidal channel area, increase an inundation area, so allow the kind of tide to come back and create some salt marsh in some area. But with the spoils that we use to do that, we'll also create a small lip seaward of the marsh that's protected by kind of a crib wall similar to that in the photo there, that runs linearly along the marsh edge. And with that, we hope to kind of be able to pilot or provide a proof of concept that we can, through amendment of the soils and improvement of drainage, bring back marsh ecosystems. So that will be this summer in View Royal Park, and we'll have lots of volunteers helping with the planting and building of these of that kind of brush dam along the edge of the marsh there. Next slide, please. The Songhees Walkway Pocket Beach, a quick update on this one. This project's been ongoing. It's been a great success at the mouth of Victoria Harbour, in the middle of Victoria Harbour. What was once a much larger shoreline complex, 2 large bays, one of them completely filled in where the green box is, that would have extended from that headland peninsula all the way back to Kimtow Road, so all the way back to that road up by the rail yard there, and Lime Bay as well, which was like half filled in. So trying to bring a little bit of piece of that back and bring awareness while bringing back some pocket beach habitat. There's not a lot of really good beach habitat left in Victoria. Yeah, next slide, please. So we tried to bring a little bit of that back. It happened over 2 phases. The second phase was completed last summer. We replaced all the beach material with nice kind of forage fish suitable beach sand and gravel. We excavated into the back shore, restabilized it by building a rock wall, and then planted native riparian vegetation in the back. Next slide, please. And overall, the project was a fairly great success. And like I said, it was limited habitat. And once we built it, people came down in droves. It's a really well-loved site. People use it to launch their canoes and paddle boards, or just enjoy the sunshine and sit on a beach. We had smelt eggs, within weeks of finishing the project, detected, and we continue to monitor to try to continue to see if this site is being used for spawning by forage fish. It's also been used as a demonstration site in terms of for coastal engineers, different regulators, as well as practitioners and just the general public. So multiple conferences have had this as a site visit. The BC Stewardship Center and the Pacific Salmon Foundation, who helped fund this project, are also using it in their internal demonstrations for their programming, including the Resilient Coast for Shorelines and the Green Shores for Shoreline Development, which this is now in application for certification for award as a Green Shores project. Cecilia Dick is shown on the bottom left there, leading a conference group through talking about the history of the site culturally. A welcome pool was also raised, commissioned by the Victoria International Marina on the site, which really adds to the beauty and kind of power of the site. And yeah, it's been a really large success. Next slide, please. The first kind of big storms of winter hit it quite hard, harder than we expected. The marina almost broke away. They lost their gangway. or nearly lost their gangway. It broke, and they had to really scramble to secure it. So we had a really, fairly significant event, like a 1 in 50-year event of storm hitting the shoreline. And the beach actually held up really quite well, and it actually worked really well to distribute a lot of those materials and kind of naturalize the shoreline. We lost some of the pathway, which I think was inevitable. We've since repaired it. And it really showed us the importance of monitoring these sites over time, looking at the elevation of the shoreline, looking at the substrate and below surface substrates to get an idea of how the shoreline is functioning over time. Next slide, please. There's a photo kind of just after the storms. You can see all the material's been mixed across, and it does look, a little bit more like a natural beach would rather than just kind of straight sand and then gravel. You can see the pathway has been destroyed, but we've since repaired that. And we've had some other unexpected incidences as well, including the infamous elephant seal that's been spotted up and down the gorge on his adventures, and was relocated to Banfield. But over 4 or 5 days after that, swam directly back, and the first stop he made was our little pocket beach, which we kind of doubt that he would have enjoyed the same beach a couple of years ago. So it was a kind of a small win that we all high-fived ourselves, that Emerson, the northern elephant seal, had taken a long and well-deserved break on our beach after that journey. Next slide, please. A couple little future tidbits or teasers about some future restoration projects that may or may not develop. There's the Bridges Park restoration. So this is just along the Bay Street Bridge there, where there's quite a bit of potential to do some small and rather large nourishment and marsh restoration along its shoreline. There's also the capacity for monitoring, some really good monitoring, as mentioned by Katrina through the cutthroat monitoring. So we'll get a really interesting picture of how cutthroat are using the habitat now. As well as with the shoreline monitoring, which Chloe has mentioned, if we can get a really good baseline of how it is right now, and then a kind of after picture, after restoration, we could be in for some really interesting stories. We did some beach sailing at this site and found some surf smelt, as well as some that's also where we found our smolt, along with some other salmon smolt. So it's a fairly productive little reach of shoreline that could use a little help. Next slide, please. The other kind of slam dunk for restoration would be Nymph Point Park, and we're looking into this with partners in terms of what that design would look like, and would likely involve some nourishment along the back shore, maybe some improvements along where the marina is, and some stabilization where the park is. This is a very productive beach. It's had we had one of our largest finds of surf smelt ever here, and it's kind of part of that greater Seaham Harbor, Shoal Harbor complex that is, as Austin mentioned, quite a productive site for forage fish spawning, and we want to work towards protecting it. Next slide, please. Another kind of low-lying fruit, maybe Resthaven Park Beach. This is kind of an underloved site with failing riprap, kind of falling on a degraded beach, with lots of opportunity to kind of do some regrading, some beach riparian planting, and some nourishment as well. The photos on the bottom are some photos from Washington that kind of show a similar site with similar problems, and how you can kind of intervene to restore it. Next slide, please. Finally, Tryon Beach. This is another little gem within the Seaham Harbor, Shoal Harbor smelt complex. Essentially, we don't want to do too much of the site as it's so productive and functioning so well, but we are looking into strategies in terms of how to protect this and other beaches as well. It's kind of the archetype of shoreline here, where we have surf smelt spawning on these upper reaches of the beach, but this habitat will be the first to be squeezed out with sea level rise. So as sea levels rise, we get increased storm surge. The beaches need to be able to retreat further up in order for that habitat to be maintained. If it has nowhere to go, it will just be squeezed out, and we'll lose some of the most productive spawning grounds for obligate beach spawners on our coast. So it's a really big challenge. It's one we're working towards with partners to find solutions for. And this may be a really good one to run as a case study. Next slide, please. Fundraising. A little bit of a change in gear here, but we just kind of finished up our first big push through fundraising this year. We had our auction, our annual online auction. Tons of support from local businesses, again, some new, some old, and we were able to raise over $20,000 and counting, which is just fantastic. And it's so wonderful to see the support from all of those different corporate sponsors. And we're not pausing there. We'll slowly be launching into our raffle. So we've got some really wonderful prizes, including this electric bicycle that we'll be able to kind of hold as a prize for an upcoming raffle. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully you can participate. We'll have some fun. There's a 50-50 draw and some other great early bird and second and third prizes associated with that. Yeah, next slide, please. And what we've been up to in terms of stats, I mean, these are just some really fantastic stats that we've been putting up in terms of who we've been working with, what we've been doing, how many grants and things that we've been posted with. But a lot of this has been covered by others, so I'll just kind of keep going. Next slide. And just kind of a tally of hours, which is really great. We're at 2,800. Wow. Big pat on the back for all the staff for coordinating all of this, as well as a huge thank you to all those volunteers who put in these hours. That's amazing. We're on track for probably our biggest year ever in terms of volunteer hours and engagement. So well done, everyone. And thank you to our volunteers. There's the comparisons right there. So yeah, we're well on track. And as we head into kind of a busy summer season with lots going on, we should have no problem kind of surpassing those 2023 hours as long as our staff can still stand. Next slide, please. I think that's just about it. We're on to questions. One final note, just thank you to Sue, who doesn't really get a chance to present all the things that she's doing, as spreadsheets are often not the sexiest thing to put up on a slide presentation. But thank you, Sue, for everything that you do in organizing us and keeping the ship rolling, as well as Ian Bruce, our old coordinator, our old executive director, who's now still on the team as kind of an advisor, senior advisor biologist. Thank you to Ian for all the support you've been lending myself and our team. That definitely is much appreciated. And again, with the hours and the volunteers, a special thanks to our board of directors, our executive, and those many of you who have really stepped up and contributed a lot of those hours in those totals to this organization. Thank you very much.